This is the Fertile Mindset podcast, where we explore all the emotional aspects of fertility to support you on your path to parenthood. My name is Holland. I'm the Fertile Mindset coach and a mother to 2 children after my own fertility challenges. I hope you find all the support and inspiration you need within this podcast to carry you forward on your fertility journey towards your own successful outcome. It's also my wish that through listening to these episodes, you rediscover how to enjoy life now and live it to the full while you wait for your baby. Now, let's begin today's episode. Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Fertile Mindset podcast, where it's time for another interview. And this time I invited my friend Sheila Lamb to join us. We had a chat about her own fertility journey, what the experience of fertility treatment was like for her, and how she transformed that experience into support for the fertility community through her writing. Sheila became a mother after 6 years of fertility issues, multiple treatment cycles, and finally a successful donor egg cycle in Spain at the age of 47. Her story is honest and so inspiring, and I think you're going to love hearing it. And if you'd then like to talk more with Sheila and I, she will be coming into the private Facebook group for my Fertile Mindset Sanctuary membership on Tuesday, the 30th of March at 8:30 p.m. UK time. If you are a member of the Sanctuary on a paid membership level, you will be able to join us there, and it will be lovely to continue the conversation and answer any questions you have after listening to this interview, which I hope you enjoy listening to right now. Hello, Sheila. Welcome to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you with us today. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very good. Thank you very much. All the better for speaking with you.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've actually seen each other in person, isn't it? We used to meet up at all kinds of fertility events in London and things like that. But yeah, obviously none of that's happening right now.
No.
But hopefully we'll get to meet again sometime
Absolutely.
in the not too distant future.
Yes.
So, I mean, we had a little chat before we came on to record here, but, you know, the main reason that I invited you on is because I find you to be such an inspiring person, very honest, very authentic about your own fertility journey, and your own fertility journey had its twists and turns, didn't it? And it, you know, you had obstacles to overcome, and you know, you explored different avenues to conceive your baby and finally have your lovely daughter. And I know that your story is really inspiring to others, as well as what you've done afterwards, which we're going to talk about the whole kind of journey that you've been on, both your fertility journey and then also what you've done afterwards, which is amazing how your life still now is around supporting the fertility community. So we have loads to talk about.
We'll talk quickly.
Oh, yeah. And so shall we start with your own fertility journey then? Where did that begin and what happened for you?
Yes. Okay, well, I was a bit late to the game, I suppose. I was about 41. My husband was 11 years younger than me, but he still is, obviously. So obviously, you know, a bit younger meant that he wasn't maybe on quite the same page as me when we met a couple of years before. Anyway, so after we hadn't got pregnant, we went to the doctors who told us to keep trying. I wasn't happy with that. I do have a background as a midwife and a nurse, so I kind of had a little bit, obviously, more information than maybe some people have. Anyway, long story short, we did go to the fertility, were sent to a fertility consultant specialist who did the usual tests. Now, this is back in like 2005, 2006. It was quite a long time ago. We were given the diagnosis of unexplained. Went to a clinic in London, and we did a first cycle of IUI, which wasn't successful. They suggested we immediately just go to IVF. So we did IVF, but because I was 41, maybe 42 by this stage, we were advised to do the pre-implantation genetic screening, which was very new at that time. So we for our first IVF cycle, we had ICSI with the PG I think it is, screening, and we had 6 embryos that were tested. I can't remember exactly how many eggs were collected, but 6 were tested and only 1 was normal. But at 5 days, it was still only 10 cells, so it had possibly even stopped developing. But anyway, the clinic said, well, you know, we'll put the embryo back. So we did. But I think before I even did the test, I had my period, so that didn't work. So we went back for a visit, and they said, we really suggest you do donor egg, which we didn't want to do. So we tried naturally for another couple of years. I did acupuncture, I did Chinese medicine, which tasted disgusting. I can still taste it now. You know, tried to de-stress, everything that you're supposed to do, nutrition-wise, or organic foods, etc. With hindsight, what I never really looked into was any sort of counselling or, you know, any sort of mind work. It was all to do, obviously, with the, you know, sort of food, nutrition, etc.
Which is what I think most people do, don't you? Because like you've just been told that due to your egg quality, they thought that egg donor would be the best route. So of course you're going to think, well, what would improve the quality of my eggs and cell health and so on. So yeah, it makes sense to go down that route. Yeah.
Yes. And of course, this is prior to all the support online that there is.
Of course.
Anyway, funnily enough, I was reading a article in the paper, in Sunday paper, and it was an article about this clinic in Spain, and they were talking to an English nurse who worked there, and they were talking about donor egg. And you know, I do firmly believe in the universe and things being put in front of you that are there at that time. And this is like 2.5, 3 years later, so I was like 45 by now, no sniff of a positive pregnancy at all. So I spoke to my husband about it, and we contacted the clinic, and we went to the clinic. Long story short, went to the clinic, decided to do donor egg there in Spain. At the time, and still is, anonymous. And in the UK, it wasn't anonymous anymore with the donor eggs. And that didn't really worry me so much, but I think it did worry my husband. He was less keen on knowing who the donor was. So obviously, you know, it had taken us 3 years to get to this point. So it's certainly not a quick, you know, change from trying to conceive with your own eggs to considering using donor eggs. So we went to the clinic, and it was amazing, because it was like one doctor, this nurse, a couple of embryologists. It was so different to the London clinic, which was busy, always busy. And it was actually quite nice. It was in Marbella, so, you know, we went to a nice place and had a nice little holiday. So that was our visit, like initial visit. We came home, got a phone call, said, yes, we've got a donor for you. So we did the donor egg, and we went ahead, did the cycle, and miraculously, we had acupuncture, which I'd never done before. We had acupuncture before the cycle and after the cycle. She was an acupuncturist who worked with the clinic. What I liked about the clinic as well was that we always managed to speak to the doctor. There wasn't, you know, or the nurse. And yeah, miraculously, I got pregnant. Gosh, what a shock. But the HCG level, the blood level, obviously blood result wasn't as high as it could have been. And unfortunately, 6.5 weeks, I had a miscarriage. And I went into research overdrive. I just started, you know, I'd only had the one miscarriage. I wasn't chancing having another one. So I came across a miscarriage consultant here in the UK. We made an appointment to see him because, I also read Dr. Alan Beer's book, Is Your Body Baby Friendly? Which is all about the natural killer cells, thrombophilia, immune issues, which I know there's very divided thoughts on it. And I think that is the case with infertility anyway, because everyone's different. And when you're thinking of trying to make a baby, you're actually involving two people to try and do something. So anyway, I had all these tests, was convinced there'd be something wrong with me, and there wasn't. They all came back within normal limits. But by this time I'm 46. he did say that if the clinic was happy for me to do the drugs as if I did have an issue, a blood clotting issue, then he was fine, because the drugs were steroid, aspirin, and incidentally I'd taken aspirin with that pregnancy, with the first donor cycle, when I did get pregnant. So in my mind I was like halfway there, but the aspirin wasn't enough. So anyway, the clinic were fine. They couldn't come up with any other reason why the donor egg, you know, cycle hadn't worked. We didn't have any embryos to freeze, so we had a different donor. Went back, and it was actually at the time, do you remember that Icelandic volcano that erupted?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
Nobody could fly in Europe? We were supposed to be flying to Spain.
Oh gosh.
So talk about stressful.
Oh, what
fortunately our time to fly, so when we were due to fly over, they had opened the airspace just, but we were obviously looking at, you know, driving there, getting a ferry, driving there, etc., which might have been quite an exciting thing to do, but anyway. Fortunately the airspace opened, so we went back, we did this cycle, so it was a different donor. I had acupuncture before, acupuncture after. 2-day, 2-day-old embryo. Each time 2 embryos were put back. And the nurse said, when she called up, she said, we want you to come in today to have the transfer for 2 days. One of them's jumping up and down shouting, pick me, and I'm sure it's a girl, were her words. So we went in, I had the embryo put back, and in Spain, unfortunately, your partner, your husband, can't go with you to have the embryo transfer.
Okay.
But we obviously saw the embryo on the screen, etc. And it's much nicer. It was nicer at that time because I was able to lie down. So I stayed there for about an hour. I had the acupuncture afterwards. There was, you know, when we did IVF in London, it was like, you know, they popped the embryo back and it was like, bye. And, you know, you were booted out kind of thing. So it was much more relaxing. I didn't really remember having any symptoms, but every afternoon I lay down and I listened to a CD at the time, which is a bit old-fashioned, isn't it? A visualization CD, and I used to listen to that and visualize the embryo snuggling in. And so anyway, we came home. I never test. The only one time I did test, I actually dropped the pregnancy test stick down the loo, so it was never used.
Sheila.
Could never be used anyway, so I just never bothered testing. And so I went off for my appointment at the clinic, at the hospital, rather, local hospital, to have my bloods taken. And then the clinic rang and said, so how did your result go yesterday? And I'm like, but I've just had it done. And they said, but you were supposed to have it done yesterday. So not only do I never test, but I actually tested a day late. So I said, we're waiting for the GP to call. So anyway, the GP called and the GP said, you're pregnant, and told us the results. And the results were like 800 or something like that. So they were super high. And so we rang the clinic back and everyone was really happy and stuff. And so then I was worried that I was going to miscarry again, obviously, although I did feel very different this pregnancy. So I spoke with my GP and the miscarriage consultant, and I said, I don't want to come off Clexane, which is a blood thinning injection. And the miscarriage consultant said, but you can come off at 12 weeks. I said, but I don't want to. And I said to the GP, I don't want to come off it. And then I spoke to the consultant at hospital. I was always under the consultant because by this time I was 46. I was due a week after turning 47. So I always saw the female consultant, and she said, if you want to carry on, you know, taking the Clexane, that's fine. So I took the Clexane until I was 34 weeks pregnant. And again, you know, all these things, I don't know whether the steroid, the Clexane made a difference. I have no idea. But in my heart of hearts, I think it did. But
you know what's striking me about your story, Sheila, listening, is, you know, obviously it's not the medication protocols themselves, because like you said, we're all so different. We all need different things. So we're not recommending any particular, you know, protocol right here. However, your approach, both feeling kind of really comfortable with your Spanish clinic, feeling very different to how it felt in London, you know, having that direct contact and it being so personal. And then you also doing lots of research yourself, doing great research, seeing the right people, bringing back all that information and really wanting to be heard with what you had found out and wanting to be part of the process, because this is your body and your baby. And, you know, although we can't prescribe medication ourselves, absolutely, you know, we need to be guided by what is the right direction to go in. I think we do need to feel that we are a part of it and not just feel like we're handing our bodies over to these fertility clinics and doctors and we don't even understand what's going on. And I think, although you said you didn't do much work on the mindset piece, that's a huge part about our mindset, isn't it? It's like, do I feel safe? Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel listened to? You know, and that's something, a massive kind of lesson I'd encourage everyone from what you're saying here is to take that away and just make sure that you feel you're with a clinic that will listen and you feel supported, and that you do speak up and you use your voice. And of course you listen to the advice given back as well, but you feel like it's a partnership, you know, because it's such a different experience, isn't it, when you do it that way? And I can tell that you had that two-way conversation going all the while.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, I didn't sort of see it that way at the time. It was just that, you know, I was just determined to, you know, become a mum, however that happened, you know. But I also think, you know, if you are at the very beginning, obviously I'd gained all this information over time, you know, and unfortunately, a lot of people's journeys are like mine. They are 5 or 6 years long, sometimes even longer. And, you know, if the first cycle doesn't work, or you don't know enough and you think, well, that was a waste, if it doesn't work, you know, don't beat yourself up, because you know, you don't know what you don't know. And that just comes with time and experience and all the wonderful information out there now, you know, because there wasn't all this information. Sometimes it feels like there's a little bit too much information, but you find the information that's right for you, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's go back to your early pregnancy then with your daughter. So
so I was able to take the blood thinning injection up to 34 weeks. And I mean, being 46, nearly 47, you know, I was convinced I was going to have bladder problems and I was going to be on bed rest for the whole of it and I was going to have a really bad time. And I didn't. People didn't even know I was pregnant. I was really disappointed. I had to, like, you know, stick out my stomach, so this kind of thing, to show people that I was actually pregnant. So she's now 10 years old. I didn't have a good labour, but that's another story. But she's here. She's here safe and sound, and that's, you know, that's the main thing. And we didn't have any embryos to freeze after that cycle either, which is quite. When I look back now, I think, you know, I'm sure we had quite a good number of eggs. But anyway, so we never actually had to make that decision about, do we, you know, use those frozen embryos, or do we let the frozen embryos go, you know, because, as I say, I was like 47 when I had her. So.
And listening to your story, obviously, is hugely inspiring, especially for anyone who's perhaps a similar age or considering looking at donor treatment or traveling abroad. You know, this is a real life story and a real life success story as well, and how you followed that path. But you said right at the start, you know, when it was first suggested to you to try donor eggs, recommended to you, you know, stop using your own eggs, move on to donor, that it was a big no, first of all. And you needed to go away and see what you could do naturally first. I mean, what was the switch for you there? Like, when did it feel like enough, you know, like, this is enough now, I'm going to change path?
Yeah, well, I think it was because I hadn't got pregnant, and I'd never, ever been pregnant. It's not like I'd miscarried or anything like that. You know, so far as I know, I'd never, ever been pregnant. And it was just a case of, this is not going to happen. And do I want to be a mum, or do we want to be parents some way, you know, somehow? And, you know, to be honest, I think we were a little bit naive about the donor egg situation, because we didn't know anyone who had done it, so we couldn't speak to one. Obviously, the clinic had, you know, lots of people going. In fact, I later, somehow, I think it was on a Facebook group, I somehow came across a girl who'd gone to the same clinic as us a couple of years before. She was like almost one of the first English people to have gone to this clinic, and she had twin girls. But at the time, we didn't know anyone to speak to, so we were really guided by the clinic. Yeah, I mean, you know, we had the worries that everyone has these days, you know, what would the child look like? You know, will the child look like me? And I used to have to tell myself, well, you know, we could have a child with my own eggs who doesn't look like me anyway, looks like my husband. So, you know,
there's no guarantee, is there?
there's no guarantee. And people see, if people are worried, well, what will people think? People will see what they want to see, because I met people who didn't know she was a donor egg. And when she's like, you know, maybe 2-3 years old, and they say, oh, doesn't she look like you? And I go, yes, she does, doesn't she?
Yeah. The same happened to me, Sheila, with my adopted son.
Yeah.
I'd have people saying, I remember I took him for his first pair of shoes to be fitted. So he was really tiny. And the lady fitting the shoes looked at him and went, you've got beautiful eyes, just like your mum.
Yes.
Just like, and they're actually different colour eyes. And I was like, how can she even see the same? But like you say, people see what they want to see, don't they? So yeah, but you know, you went through what the steps you needed to, you got to this point, you have your beautiful daughter.
Thank you.
But I know that's not the end of the story for you. In fact, it almost felt like the beginning from when I met you, and what I know for you, you know, that you're this author and this advocate and massive supporter of the fertility community. You dedicate so much time and so much energy to sharing with others, just like you are here today. So could you tell us a little bit about that part of your story? It feels like a story of two halves almost. So what happened after, you know, you became a mum?
Well, I didn't actually, my husband and I had a business that was sold soon after she was born. So I didn't actually have a job to go back to. And, you know, we'd been through all of this and we were like, well, I don't actually want to go back to work as such and have a career. So I'd always been aware of a magazine that had been around at the very end of you know, trying to conceive before having Jessica. And I was like, you know, maybe I could do a magazine. Well, bearing in mind, I've never done anything like this before. So my husband's the technical one. And obviously I was, you know, sort of the one who was passionate about. And really it was about trying to get information out there to people. So I did start a magazine, which is how we met, because then I came across you and you were doing your summit. I'm like, how do you know all these people? And which you kindly wrote an article on EFT for the magazine. So I did the magazine for 2 years. It was more of a labor of love, because again, this is like 2000 and where are we now? 2015, 16. So I loved putting it together, and I loved, you know, it was lovely to connect with so many people doing so much. But at the end of the day, I had to, it was probably just a little bit too much for one person to do. I think I did about eight issues.
Yeah,
but
huge amount of work went into that, though. I can remember as each issue was released, it was amazing to see. And I guess what you would have wanted when you were on your journey, because like you said, there wasn't so much information out there, was there, you know, 10 plus years ago.
That's right.
It was much harder to access it. And then when you realize that, yes, suddenly I guess the advent of social media and the internet and bringing out all that information into the public domain, and if you could present it all together to make it easy for people, I can understand why that was a part of your story.
Yes, yeah, getting it all into one place, because, you know, the internet obviously was around when we started, but all I could remember finding was pay $99, get this, and in 3 months you'll be pregnant. And that was all there was. There wasn't anything else. And yet when I was doing the magazine, I was coming across people like yourself, people who were experts, people who, you know, and so it was kind of like trusted information, which you don't always know on the internet if it is trusted. But obviously I was always coming up with what can we do for next issue's articles. So I ended up with a spreadsheet of just things that people might want to know about. So obviously I was looking at the spreadsheet when I was finished doing the magazine, and I was like, do you know, hang on a minute, I could still put this information out there for people, but I'll put it in a book. And it ended up being my first book, which is my fertility book. And that's just literally a glossary, an A to Z glossary of all the terminology from acupuncture all the way through to zinc and everything in between. And because I was, as I say, I had been a nurse and a midwife, I wrote it in a obviously very jargon-free manner. So you should be able to pick it up and more or less understand, I don't know, azoospermia or something, without having to go down the rabbit hole of the internet. And there's illustrations in there as well. And I self-published that book myself, and put it on Amazon. And I was like, okay, how do I let people know it's there? Because it's, there's so many books on Amazon. And I think it was Kate from Your Fertility Journey, I think. She said, join Instagram. And I was like, oh no, please, no, I'm on Facebook. I can't, Twitter, I can't cope with anything else. But I went on Instagram, I joined Instagram, and I was just blown away by how kind everybody was and how people were sharing, not, the protocol, as you say, but how they were feeling emotionally.
Yeah.
And obviously that was like, it was like, my God, this is how I felt. But I didn't know that was how people felt when I was dealing with infertility and IVF and stuff. So again, I just kind of thought, can I get this information in a book for people who aren't on Instagram, for people who don't know? And that was where my This Is series came from.
Wonderful. And now, as you are a really prolific author with a whole list of books, like you say, it's so you've got This Is, did it start with This Is Trying to Conceive?
That's right, yes. So that's just about trying to conceive, nothing else. And then there's This Is IVF, because a lot of people who do struggle to get pregnant do need IVF or IUI. And then there's This Is the 2-week wait, because if you do IVF or IUI, you have to have, unless your cycle is cancelled, you would go through a 2-week wait. And then the recent one, which I published in September-ish of last year, October, is This Is Pregnancy and Baby Loss. And the next book, it's not quite to do with this series. It's a book I'm specifically doing for the Black, Asian, ethnic minorities. So it's all ladies from the ethnic, those ethnic minorities have written about their experience, all the way from trying to conceive, all the way through to stillbirth, neonatal death. Because we all experience the same emotions going through the whole, all the way from trying to conceive to pregnancy loss, if unfortunately you've had a miscarriage. But there are other stigmas and taboos for women from those ethnic communities where it's not spoken about enough and it's not understood enough. So all my books, although they are short stories of people's experience, so if you're going through it, you can resonate with one of them or two of them or even more. These, I hope they all also raise awareness, so you could give them to somebody else to find out what it's like.
I was thinking awareness outside of just the women and the men who are trying to conceive, but also into the community that's supporting them. I mean, and that's where you come in with your background of even midwifery, of even at that point when they are pregnant and they're being supported, to have that knowledge of what it's like to have been through a fertility journey and then be in labor with this precious baby. It's having that understanding, isn't it? So I think the fact you're so visible now with this wonderful series of books, and I hope they are getting out there into the right hands, and that's why I wanted you here partly as well to share that, so that people can see there is so much more information and support than they realize is available. It's literally everywhere now, and like you say, some will want to find out on Instagram and connect with what is a really beautiful community there, or other social media platforms. Others may not want to do that, may not want to be online, but they would really appreciate a book to still connect them, with all of that knowledge and all of that support. So it's a wonderful thing you've done. You've dedicated so many, I'm not even going to say hours, it's months and years of your time, so much of your time into creating these really beautiful resources. And I know that you have a giveaway at the moment, don't you, of your This Is Trying to Conceive ebook copies?
Yes, I'm giving away 10,000 free copies of This Is Trying to Conceive ebook, and that was just yeah, it was, again, just to, I mean, I actually started it in November, which was National Fertility Awareness Week here in the UK, but it will go on obviously until 10,000 copies are given away. And it just kind of blows my mind that I could help 10,000 people. So it is available from the link you've got there, which just takes you to a landing page, which does get you to put your email address in, but you can unsubscribe. I really don't mind. In fact, I love it when people unsubscribe from sort of, email sort of newsletters that I've got, because they email me sometimes and say, oh, I'm unsubscribing because I'm pregnant.
Yes.
Which I think it's wonderful. I think, go for it. I don't want you on my list anymore. Go away.
Yeah, it's the only kind of connection with people, isn't it, in fertility, where you hope that they're not going to need you for too long. So
that's right.
We love connecting with this community, but it's even more amazing to see when they kind of graduate onto motherhood. Absolutely. So what I'm going to do, Sheila, is include all of the links to this wonderful 10,000 ebook giveaway that you have. I'm going to include the link to claim that, and the links to your website and your other books and your social media, all on the podcast page, which will be at episode number 15. So that will be at fertilemindset.com/episode-15, or just go to the podcast page on my site and you'll find it there, because it's such a wonderful resource, and I'm really pleased that we can get that out there. And if that book is useful and inspiring, then of course there's the others in the series. And I was just thinking, if I can put an idea forward for another book for you, Sheila. I was thinking, the whole concept of donor treatment in itself is huge, and brings up, just like you were saying, with the minorities as well, it brings up such unique challenges that simply, people who simply look at IVF as a standalone treatment don't really necessarily understand all the other thoughts, all the other challenges and things to work through that you need to get to in order to go through a donor cycle, or just to decide whether that is right for you. I'm going to put that one in the hat.
I think I've already got a list of another 5 to do.
Oh, really? Wow.
So yes. So donor conception is definitely, and as I've grown as a sort of, realizing what people want, then I will just go back and I will just add stories to these books, so they're kind of like a work in progress. They're a finished work now, but they can always be added to, because there's just so many stories out there to tell.
There are, definitely. And we hope to feature more on this podcast as well. It's been such a pleasure to listen to your story initially, and then hear where you've been since then. It's just so beautiful, so inspiring. And I know that you're going to be around for the fertility community, on an ongoing basis. And I expect to see you at all the wonderful events in London where we used to bump into each other. Hopefully that's possible again soon. It's really lovely to have this conversation with you, Sheila. Thank you for everything you do for the community. It's such worthwhile work. It's a real pleasure to chat to you as well. So take care. Thanks so much for joining us.
And you take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
I'm so pleased you're listening to the Fertile Mindset podcast, and now I would love to invite you to join us in the Fertile Mindset Sanctuary. The Sanctuary is my fertility support membership, which is focused on taking care of you and helping you enjoy your life while you wait for your baby. In the Sanctuary, I'll guide you through using an amazing technique called EFT or tapping, and you'll soon be feeling less stressed and more joyful. If you're not already in the Sanctuary, do come and join us today, because the best time to start receiving support on your fertility journey is always right now. Honestly, it makes such a difference to have good quality emotional support and techniques that you can pick up and use yourself whenever you need them. Go to fertilemindset.com/sanctuary to join us today. I look forward to hopefully seeing you there and at the next episode of the Fertile Mindset podcast.